I didn't expect anything special the day Scott showed up. New partner, new routine, same job. That's what I told myself. But the first thing he said to me was, "Hey, are you always this quiet? Or is that just my effect on people?" And somehow, by the end of that week, he knew more about me than most people I'd known for years. My name's Justin. I'm 26, and I work as an EMT in a mid-sized city where nothing is ever calm for long. The job is chaos, adrenaline, long hours, bad coffee, and the kind of exhaustion that settles deep into your bones. You don't do this job alone. Your partner matters. A lot. So when they told me mine was transferring to another station, I wasn't thrilled about starting over. "New guy's coming in tomorrow," my supervisor said, like it was no big deal. "Name's Scott. Don't scare him off." "I don't scare people," I muttered. He just laughed. Scott walked in the next morning like he already belonged there. Tall, broad shoulders, dark blonde hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. Clean uniform, confident walk, easy smile, and eyes that actually paid attention when you spoke. "You must be Justin," he said, offering his hand. "I've heard you're the calm one." "I've heard you talk too much," I replied automatically. He grinned. "Good. We're going to balance each other out." I remember thinking, great. Another overly friendly partner who burns out in a month. I was wrong. Our first call together was a car accident. Nothing dramatic, but enough to see how someone works under pressure. Scott didn't panic, didn't freeze, didn't try to take over. He just matched my pace. When I moved, he was already there. When I asked for something, it was in my hand before I finished the sentence. No ego, no hesitation. After we transferred the patient, he leaned against the ambulance and let out a breath. "Okay," he said. "That was intense." "That was mild," I said. He looked at me. "You're terrifying." For the first time that morning, I almost smiled. The thing about long shifts is that you end up talking, even if you don't want to. At first, it was work stuff, protocols, stories, complaints about management. Then it was normal things. He asked where I grew up. I asked why he transferred. He told me he hated his last station because nobody talked to each other. "I don't get how people do this job and then sit in silence for 12 hours, he said. "I like silence," I said. He studied me for a second. "You like quiet," he corrected, "not silence." I didn't ask how he knew the difference. By day 3, he knew my coffee order. By day 4, he started bringing an extra one without asking. By day 5, he'd figured out that I skipped meals during busy shifts and started handing me protein bars like it was part of the equipment checklist. "You're not my mom," I told him. "You're welcome," he said. The weird part wasn't that he was friendly. The weird part was how easy it felt. Usually, it takes me months to get comfortable around someone. I keep things surface level. Work, jokes, nothing personal. With Scott, the distance kept shrinking without me noticing. One slow night, we were parked outside the station, the city quiet for once. "You ever think about quitting?" he asked. "Every week," I said. "But you don't." "No." He nodded, like that answer mattered. "Good," he said. "Why?" He looked straight ahead. "Because you're the kind of person I'd want showing up if something happened to me." That hit harder than it should have. It wasn't until the second week that I realized something else. Scott didn't just talk to me. He watched me. Not in a weird way. Not intense. Just attentive. If I was tired, he noticed. If I was quiet, he didn't push. If a call hit me harder than I let on, he'd find some excuse to keep the conversation light afterward. Nobody had ever done that for me before. I didn't know what to do with it. One night, after a rough shift, we were cleaning the ambulance in the bay. It was late. Quiet. The fluorescent lights made everything look colder than it was. Scott was wiping down the stretcher when he said, casually, "You don't let people get close to you, do you?" I froze for half a second. "I work with you 12 hours a day," I said. "You're pretty close." "That's not what I meant." I kept cleaning. He didn't push. After a minute, he said quietly, "You don't have to answer. I just noticed things." That should have annoyed me. Instead, it made my chest feel tight. The thing is, he was right. I kept things controlled, predictable, safe. Work was work. People were temporary. That's how you survive in a job where things can fall apart in seconds. That's how you don't get attached. And then, 3 days later, Scott broke that rule without even realizing it. We'd just come back from a long call. I was exhausted, sweaty, and halfway through changing my shirt in the locker room when the door opened. Scott walked in, stopped mid-step, and then just leaned against the doorframe. "Okay," he said. "I need to ask you something. And I promise this is a normal question." I sighed. That's never a good start. He hesitated for the first time since I'd met him. Then he said, "Why do you look like you're carrying the whole world by yourself all the time?" I stared at him, because nobody had ever asked me that before. And for the first time since he'd started working with me, I didn't have a quick answer. That was the moment things started changing, and I didn't realize it yet. But Scott wasn't just becoming my partner. He was becoming someone I was starting to depend on. Too fast. Way too fast. The question stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. Why do you look like you're carrying the whole world by yourself all the time? I brushed it off in the moment. Occupational hazard, I told him, pulling a clean shirt over my head. You try lifting stretchers all day. He didn't laugh. Scott just watched me for a second like he was deciding whether to let it go. He did. But something had shifted. After that night, he started asking different kinds of questions. Not intrusive, just pointed. Do you ever sleep properly? When was the last time you took a day off? Do you actually talk to anyone outside of work? You're weirdly invested, I told him one afternoon while we were restocking supplies. He shrugged. You're my partner. If you burn out, I burn out. That's dramatic. It's practical. But it didn't feel practical. It felt personal. About 3 weeks in, we had our first really bad call together. A house fire. Family inside. Smoke everywhere. We did everything right. We moved fast. We stabilized who we could. But not everyone makes it. That's the part nobody prepares you for. After we transferred the last patient, we sat in the ambulance in complete silence. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful. Scott's hands were still shaking. Mine weren't. They never did. You good? I asked him. He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Yeah, I'm good. He wasn't. I knew it. Because even though I didn't shake on the outside, I felt it on the inside. That heavy, hollow ache. We drove back without music. Without talking. Back at the station, he disappeared into the locker room. I gave him space. That's what you're supposed to do. 10 minutes later, he came out looking composed. Too composed. You heading home? He asked. Yeah. He hesitated. Then, you want to grab a beer first? That caught me off guard. I don't usually mix work with anything. But something about the way he asked, not casual, not flirty, not pressured, just needing company. Sure, I said. We ended up at a small bar 2 blocks from the station. Dim lights. Quiet crowd. For a while, we just sat there. Then Scott said, I hate that part. What part? The part where you do everything right, and it's still not enough. I stared at my drink. Yeah, I said. He glanced at me. How do you deal with it? I almost gave him my standard answer. You don't. You just move on. But instead, I told the truth. You don't, I said quietly. You just carry it. He studied me like he was memorizing the words. That's not healthy, he said. I huffed out a small breath. You new to this job? He leaned back in his chair. No, he said. But I don't want to turn into someone who feels nothing. That landed harder than he knew. Because I wasn't sure anymore if I felt nothing or just didn't let myself. We talked for 2 hours that night. About the job. About mistakes. About the first patient that ever stuck with him. At some point, the conversation shifted. Why'd you transfer? I asked. He stared at his bottle for a second. Got out of something, he said. What kind of something? He smirked faintly. The complicated kind. I waited. He looked up at me. Relationship, he clarified. 3 years. Didn't end well. Something twisted in my chest. I didn't know why. Her. I asked. He held my gaze for a beat too long. No, he said. And that was it. No elaboration. No explanation. But my brain caught up a second later. Oh, I didn't react. At least, I don't think I did. I just nodded once. Got it. He watched me carefully. You're not surprised? Should I be? He shrugged. Some people are. I'm not some people. That seemed to relax him. He leaned back, something softer settling into his expression. Good, he said quietly. The air between us felt different after that. Not awkward. Just charged. Like we'd crossed an invisible line without realizing it. On the walk back to the station parking lot, our shoulders brushed once. Neither of us moved away. It was small. Accidental. But I felt it. And judging by the way his breath hitched almost imperceptibly, so did he. Over the next few shifts, things didn't change on the surface. We still worked seamlessly. Still joked. Still grabbed coffee. But underneath, something was building. He'd stand a little closer. Hold eye contact a little longer. Smile in a way that wasn't just friendly. And I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way his laugh dropped lower when it was real. The way he touched my arm when he made a point. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. It wasn't just proximity anymore. It was awareness. One night, we were on standby in the ambulance, rain hitting the windshield. The city lights blurred outside. Scott was scrolling on his phone. I was pretending not to look at him. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly. "Depends." He locked his phone and turned toward me fully. "Are you seeing anyone?" My pulse spiked just once. "No." He nodded slowly. "You?" "Not since the complicated thing." Silence settled between us. Then he added, almost too casually, "Good." I turned my head to look at him. "Good." He didn't look away. "Yeah." The tension in that small space became almost unbearable. Rain, dim light, close quarters. My heart was beating harder than it should have been. "Scott," I said quietly. He swallowed. "What?" I should have shut it down right there. Set a boundary. Kept it professional. Instead, I asked, "What are we doing?" He held my gaze. And for the first time since I'd met him, Scott didn't have an immediate answer. "What are we doing?" The words hung there between us, thick as the rain pounding on the windshield. Scott didn't look away. He didn't smile it off either. "I don't know," he said quietly. That honesty almost undid me more than anything else could have, because I didn't know either. And that scared me. We got a call before either of us could say anything else. A minor one. Drunk guy with a sprained ankle. Normal. Routine. Easy. But the energy in the ambulance had changed. Every time our hands brushed reaching for equipment, it felt intentional. Every glance lasted a second too long. And neither of us mentioned what had just happened. After shift, we sat in the parking lot longer than usual. Engine off. Windows cracked. Night air cool. Scott was staring straight ahead, jaw tight. "Justin," he said finally. "Yeah. I don't want to mess this up." This could have meant a lot of things. The job, the partnership, or whatever was building between us. "You won't," I said automatically. He turned to me. "You don't even know what I'm talking about." I held his gaze. "I think I do." Silence. Heavy. Loaded. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're dangerous, you know that?" "How?" "You act like you don't feel anything. But you do. You just hide it." I swallowed. "And you see through it?" "Yeah." That word hit harder than it should have. The thing about working in close quarters is that you learn someone's rhythms. I knew how Scott moved before he did. When he was tired. When he was stressed. When he was thinking too much. And he was thinking too much now. "So say it," I said quietly. He blinked. "Say what?" "What you're trying not to say." His jaw flexed. "This is a bad idea," he said. "Probably. We work together." "I know. If it gets weird." "It already is," I cut in. That pulled a real reaction out of him. His lips twitched. Then he sobered. "I don't want to lose you as my partner." The sincerity in his voice knocked the air out of me. "You won't," I said again. "You can't promise that." "No," I admitted. "But I can promise I won't run." He searched my face like he was looking for doubt. There wasn't any. Because here was the truth I hadn't said out loud yet. I was already in too deep. The first time he touched me on purpose wasn't dramatic. No kiss. No big confession. Just his hand finding mine between the seats. Slow. Deliberate. Like he was giving me time to pull away. I didn't. My fingers curled around his without thinking. The contact was warm. Steady. Real. We sat there like that for maybe 10 seconds. Maybe an hour. Time felt strange. Then headlights passed behind us, and the spell broke. Scott let go first. "Okay." He exhaled, almost to himself. "Okay," I echoed. Neither of us knew what that meant. We didn't tell anyone. We didn't label anything. But after that night, the distance was gone. Not physically. We were still careful at work. But emotionally, he started texting me on off days. Random stuff. "Did you eat? Tell me you're not skipping the gym again. Found a coffee place that's actually decent." I found myself smiling at my phone like an idiot. I hated it. I loved it. One evening, about a week later, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door in sweats, hair a mess. He looked nervous. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. I didn't want to think alone tonight." That told me everything. I stepped aside. He came in. We sat on my couch. No TV. No distractions. Just quiet. After a while, he said, "I haven't done this before." "Done what?" "This. With someone I work with. Someone who matters." The word hung there. Matters. I didn't joke it away. "Me neither," I admitted. He looked relieved. "Good. I was worried you'd be emotionally unavailable and ruin my life." I snorted. Still possible. He smiled. But then it faded. Justin, he said softly. Yeah. Tell me if I'm moving too fast. That almost made me laugh. Too fast. He'd already slipped under my skin before I noticed. You are, I said honestly. His expression fell. But I don't want you to stop. The way his shoulders relaxed at that. It did something to me. He leaned in slowly. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just close enough that I could feel his breath. If this messes everything up, he murmured, I'm blaming you. Fair. His lips brushed mine. Soft. Tentative. Like he was asking permission again. I answered by pulling him closer. And when he kissed me back properly, hands sliding to the back of my neck, something inside me cracked open. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just tension finally breaking. It was relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for weeks without realizing it. We didn't go further than that. Not that night. We just sat there afterward, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. This is insane, he whispered. Yeah. You regret it? No. He smiled against my skin. Good. The problem wasn't that we moved too fast. The problem was how natural it felt. Too natural. Like he'd always been there. Like we'd skipped steps without noticing. And that scared me more than anything. Because when something feels that right that quickly, you start wondering how hard it's going to hurt if it falls apart. And neither of us knew yet that the real test wasn't going to come from the job. It was going to come from me. The problem with pretending something isn't serious is that eventually it becomes serious anyway. After that first kiss, we didn't suddenly turn into a couple. We didn't announce anything. We didn't even talk about it properly. We just kept going. And that's where I messed up. At work, we were professional. No touching. No looks that lingered too long. No stupid risks. But the energy was different. Quieter. More charged. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me when we were waiting on a call, and there'd be something in his expression that made my chest tighten. Not lust. Not just that. It was something deeper. Like he was trying to memorize me. Off shift was different. He started staying over. At first, it was practical. Too tired to drive home. Early shift tomorrow. But eventually, neither of us pretended. We'd end up on my couch or in my bed, talking about everything and nothing. He told me more about his ex, how the relationship had slowly turned into something cold, how he'd felt unseen by the end. I don't ever want to feel invisible again, he said one night, staring at my ceiling. You're not invisible, I told him. He turned to look at me. I'm not, am I? The vulnerability in that question scared me, because I knew I wasn't as open as he was. Scott felt everything out loud. If he was frustrated, you knew. If he was happy, it showed. If he cared, you felt it. Me? I was controlled. Contained. And that difference started to matter. About a month after the first kiss, we had a day off together. No shift. No obligations. He showed up at my place with coffee and this stupid grin. What? I asked. You're coming with me. Where? Just trust me. I should have known that was dangerous. We ended up driving out of the city, windows down, music too loud. He took me to this overlook outside town. Nothing fancy. Just trees, quiet, open sky. We sat on the hood of his truck, legs dangling. This is where I used to come when I needed to think, he said. About what? Everything. He glanced at me. Lately? You. That word again. Heavy. I didn't joke it away. But I didn't say anything either. Underscore. He noticed. Of course he did. You go quiet every time it gets real, he said softly. I'm not going quiet. You are. I stared out at the trees. You move fast, I said finally. He frowned. Fast. Scott, it's been what? 6 weeks. And you're acting like. Like what? He pushed. I hesitated. Like I'm already permanent. Silence fell between us. Not angry. Just thick. He looked at me for a long time. I don't do half things, Justin, he said quietly. If I'm in, I'm in. My chest tightened. And if I'm not ready for that. There it was. The thing I'd been avoiding. He didn't look mad. He looked hurt. I'm not asking you to marry me, he said. I'm asking you not to treat this like it's temporary. I hated that he was right. Because part of me had been keeping one foot out the door. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. You scare me, I admitted before I could stop myself. His expression softened instantly. Why? Because this feels, I searched for the word. Important. He exhaled slowly. That's not a bad thing. It is if I screw it up. He reached for my hand. Not dramatic. Just steady. You're not going to screw it up by caring. I squeezed his fingers without thinking. That's not what I'm afraid of. He tilted his head. What are you afraid of? I swallowed. That you'll leave. The words came out rough. Honest. Ugly. But real. For the first time since I'd met him, Scott didn't have a quick response. He just looked at me. Then he slid off the hood and stood in front of me, close enough that my knees brushed his thighs. I don't run when things get real, he said quietly. I left the last relationship because it stopped being real. His hand came up, resting against my jaw. I'm here, Justin. Not halfway. Not temporarily. I held his gaze. You can't promise forever. No, he agreed. But I can promise I'm not looking for the exit. That did something to me. Something steady. Something grounding. I kissed him first that time. Not tentative. Not cautious. Just sure. And when he pulled me closer, hands firm at my waist, I stopped thinking about timelines. About fear. About control. For a while, it was just him. The problem is, when you start letting someone in, you also start showing them the parts you usually hide. And I hadn't shown him those yet. Not all of them. He thought I was strong, stable, reliable. He hadn't seen me shut down. He hadn't seen me pull away. He hadn't seen what I do when I feel overwhelmed. And he was about to. Because 2 shifts later, everything we'd built in those 6 weeks was about to get tested in a way neither of us expected. And this time, it wasn't going to be quiet tension or soft confessions. It was going to hurt. It happened on a Thursday. Long shift. Back-to-back calls. No real breaks. The kind of day where your nerves are already worn thin before something actually goes wrong. And then something did. We got dispatched to a cardiac arrest. Middle-aged male. Collapsed at work. When we arrived, it was chaos. Coworkers panicking. Someone crying. Someone yelling directions that didn't make sense. Scott and I moved automatically. Assess. CPR. Airway. Rhythm check. We've done this 100 times. But this one felt different. I don't know why. Maybe it was the wife arriving halfway through. Maybe it was the way she kept saying, he was fine this morning. We worked him for 32 minutes. 32. That's longer than most. Scott looked at me during the last rhythm check. I knew what he was asking. I nodded. Time of death. The wife's scream is what stuck. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just broken. I've heard that sound before. But for some reason, this time it got under my skin. We cleaned up in silence. No small talk. No usual. We did everything we could. Back in the ambulance, Scott pulled off his gloves and just stared at his hands. I focused on the road. That's what I do when things get loud in my head. I narrow the world down to something controllable. Traffic lights. Speed. Lanes. Anything but the replay. Halfway back to the station, he said my name. Justin. Yeah. You okay? I hesitated. That was my mistake. Because he heard it. I'm fine, I said. You're not. I'm good. You've been quiet since we called it. I said I'm fine. My tone sharpened without meaning to. Silence filled the cab. He leaned back in his seat. Okay, he said quietly. And that was it. Back at the station, I went straight to the locker room. Didn't wait. Didn't talk. I needed space. I needed to shut it down. That's how I survived this job. Feel it later. Not now. Never now. He followed me. Of course he did. Justin, I don't want to talk about it. You don't have to. Scott. I snapped, turning toward him. I said I'm fine. He stopped. Really looked at me. You're not fine, he said calmly. The calm made it worse. Stop telling me what I am. I shot back. Something flickered across his face. Not anger. Hurt. I'm trying to be here for you. I don't need you to be here for me. The second the words left my mouth, I wanted them back. But it was too late. He stepped back like I'd physically shoved him. Okay, he said again. That same quiet tone. Only this time, it felt like distance. He grabbed his bag. I'm heading out. Scott, take your space. The door shut behind him. And suddenly the locker room felt too empty. I stood there for a long time, staring at the floor, heart pounding for no reason I could justify. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of it. But when I get overwhelmed, I push. It's instinct. Protect. Contain. Shut down. And he'd walked straight into that wall. He didn't text that night. Didn't call. Which was unusual. I told myself it was fine. He was giving me space. That's what I wanted, right? Space. But the apartment felt too quiet. Too still. I kept replaying his face when I said I didn't need him. The way his jaw tightened. The way his shoulders squared like he was bracing. The next shift together was worse. Professional. Efficient. but cold. No extra glances. No small touches. No stupid comments about my coffee habits. He was still kind, still steady, but he wasn't close. And I felt the difference immediately. During a slow stretch, he was checking inventory. I watched him from across the bay. He didn't look at me once. That's when it hit me. I wasn't afraid he'd leave. I was afraid I'd push him away. And I had. "Scott," I said finally. He paused, but didn't turn around. "Yeah." I didn't mean it. Silence. He capped the supply box slowly before facing me. "I know," he said. "That's not what I meant." His expression was guarded now, and I hated that I put it there. "When things get bad," I said carefully, "I shut down. I don't do it on purpose." "I know," he repeated, "but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." That landed. "I wasn't trying to push you out," I said. "But you did." He wasn't accusing, just stating a fact. I stepped closer, not touching, just closing the space. "I don't know how to let someone be there in the moment," I admitted. His eyes softened slightly. "I'm not asking you to be different overnight," he said. "I just don't want to feel like I'm on the outside when it matters." The vulnerability in that sentence almost broke me. "You're not on the outside," I said immediately. "Then let me in." Simple, direct, terrifying. I swallowed. "I don't know how." He stepped closer this time, close enough that our boots almost touched. "Then learn," he said quietly. "With me." God, the trust in that, the patience, the refusal to walk away even when I'd made it easy for him to. "I'm scared I'll mess this up," I said again. "You will," he said. That caught me off guard. "You'll say the wrong thing." "So will I?" "That's not the point." "Then what is?" He held my gaze. "That you don't shut me out when it's hard." The honesty in that moment felt heavier than any call we'd run. Because this wasn't about adrenaline or chaos. It was about us. And I couldn't fix this with skill, only with vulnerability, which I've never been good at. So I did something small, but big for me. I reached for his hand. Not hidden, not subtle, just there, in the middle of the station bay. His fingers tightened around mine instantly. And this time, I didn't let go first. But even as we stood there, repairing something fragile, neither of us knew that the real test wasn't over. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't surviving the bad call. It's surviving the quiet after. And what we were about to face next wasn't about fear of losing each other. It was about deciding whether we were brave enough to build something real. Things didn't magically become easy after that. That's the part nobody tells you. You don't have one honest conversation and suddenly you're healed. Open, emotionally fluent. What we had after that shift wasn't perfection. It was effort. And effort is messy. The next few weeks felt steadier. Not dramatic. Not intense. Just real. When a call hit hard, Scott didn't crowd me. But he didn't back away either. He'd sit next to me in the ambulance, knee barely touching mine, grounding without forcing. And I started trying. Actually trying. Instead of "I'm fine," I'd say, "That was rough." Instead of walking away, I'd stay in the room. It sounds small. It wasn't. One night after shift, we ended up back at my apartment again. No tension. No big emotional talks. Just tired. We were lying in bed, half asleep, when he said quietly into the dark, "I told my sister about you." That woke me up completely. "You did what?" He laughed softly. "Relax. I didn't give her your social security number." "Scott." She asked if I was seeing anyone. And I said, "Yeah." My chest tightened. "And what did you say about me?" He shifted onto his side to face me. "I said you're steady, smart, annoyingly self-contained, and that you make me feel safe." Safe. That word hit differently. "You told her that?" I asked. "Yeah." I swallowed. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." That's when it clicked. He wasn't just feeling this. He was choosing it. Out loud. In his life. And I was still halfway hiding. The truth is, I hadn't told anyone about him. Not because I was ashamed, but because saying it out loud made it real. And real meant risk. He must have sensed the shift in me. "You don't have to be where I am yet," he said quietly. "I'm not keeping score." "That's not it." "Then what is it?" I stared at the ceiling. I've never had something that feels this solid. He was quiet. And I don't trust solid things. That one hurt to admit. He propped himself up on one elbow. "Justin." I turned toward him. "You don't have to prepare for the worst all the time." I gave him a look. "I'm an EMT." He smiled faintly. "I know. But this isn't triage. You don't have to anticipate the crash before it happens." I wanted to argue. But he wasn't wrong. The real turning point didn't come during a fight or a dramatic moment. It came on a random Tuesday. We were at the grocery store. Nothing special. Just picking up food after shift. I was arguing with him about buying the expensive coffee. You won't even taste the difference, I said. I absolutely will. You're dramatic. You're cheap. We were smiling. Bickering. Normal. And then I saw it. A coworker from another station. Walking toward us. I felt my body tense instantly. Scott noticed. Hey, he murmured quietly. You okay? Yeah. But my hand had already slipped out of his. Automatically. Instinct. Protect. Contain. The coworker waved. We made small talk. Scott stood slightly behind me. Not distant. Not embarrassed. Just aware. When the guy left, the air felt heavier. You don't want people to know? Scott said gently. It wasn't accusatory. It was observant. I hated that he was right. It's not that, I said quickly. Then what is it? I didn't have a clean answer. It's work, I said finally. It's complicated. He studied me. Justin. What? I don't need you to hold my hand in the cereal aisle. That's not what I was doing. You let go like you got burned. That landed hard. Because that's exactly what it felt like. Burned. Exposed. I'm not ashamed of you, I said immediately. I know. But you're scared. He wasn't angry. Just tired. Of what? He asked softly. Of it becoming a thing. It already is a thing. I mean a thing at work. He exhaled slowly. I'm not asking you to make announcements. Then what are you asking? He looked at me for a long moment. That you don't act like I'm something you need to hide. That hurt. Because I hadn't meant it like that. But impact doesn't care about intent. I don't want to lose credibility, I admitted. You won't. You don't know that. And you don't know that you will. Silence. Shoppers moving around us. Normal life happening. While my chest felt tight. I'm not good at being vulnerable in public, I said finally. You don't have to be. Then what do you want from me? He stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough. I want to feel like I'm on your team everywhere. Not just behind closed doors. That sentence broke something open in me. Because he was right. He'd stepped into my world fully. Told his sister. Opened up. Shown up. And I was still guarding the door. I reached for his hand. Right there in the aisle. In plain sight. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just real. His fingers tightened around mine. And he didn't smile. Didn't make a big deal. He just squeezed once. Like he understood what that cost me. We didn't make it an announcement. We didn't change at work overnight. But I stopped flinching. Stopped pulling away. And slowly, it became normal. Not scandalous. Not dramatic. Just us. That night, back at my apartment, he looked at me in a way that felt different. Steady. Certain. You're learning, he said softly. Yeah. Yeah. I shook my head slightly. You're patient. He smiled. I'm invested. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. It grounded me. But love, or whatever this was becoming, doesn't get tested in the obvious moments. It gets tested in the quiet ones. In the ordinary ones. In the choice to stay. And the next choice we were about to face was bigger than either of us expected. The next choice didn't look big at first. It started with an email. Scott got it halfway through a shift. I saw his expression change before he even said anything. What? I asked. He turned his phone toward me. Advanced Critical Care Training Program. 6-month rotation. Out of state. Competitive. Prestigious. Career-changing. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. That's huge, I said automatically. He didn't look excited. They want me to start in 3 months. 3 months. That word echoed louder than it should have. We finished the shift like professionals. Ran calls. Filed reports. Functioned. But the air between us was different. He didn't bring it up again until we were in my apartment that night. I didn't apply, he said quietly. What? I mean, I did. Months ago. Before you. That shouldn't have stung. But it did. Before you. It's a big opportunity, I said carefully. Yeah. You should take it. He studied my face. That was fast. What? You didn't even hesitate. I forced a shrug. It's good for your career. Justin. What? Look at me. I did. And I hated that he could read me that easily. You're already pulling back, he said softly. I'm not. You are. The truth? I felt it happening. That instinct. Protect. Contain. Prepare. If he was leaving, even temporarily, then I needed to brace. Better to step back early than get blindsided later. It's 6 months, I said. That's not forever. No. But it's not nothing. He nodded. Silence settled between us. Say what you're actually thinking, he said gently. I exhaled slowly. I'm thinking long distance is really hard. It does. I'm thinking you'll be in a new place. New people. New everything. And, and I don't know what that does to this. There it was. Honest. Raw. Unfiltered. He didn't argue. Didn't dismiss it. He just moved closer. I don't want to lose this, he said quietly. Then don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Because distance changes things. I knew that from experience. From past almost relationships that faded when effort got inconvenient. From people who slowly stopped texting back. I'm not them, he said. I know. Do you? That question hit. Because doubt had already started creeping in. Not about him. About whether I could handle it. I don't want to ask you to stay, I said finally. He blinked. You wouldn't be asking. It would feel like it. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if I want to stay? That caught me off guard. What? What if I turn it down? My chest tightened immediately. Don't. Why? Because you'll resent me. I won't. You don't know that. And you don't know that I will. We were circling, both trying to protect the other. And maybe ourselves. You worked hard for this, I said. You deserve it. And what about us? I swallowed. We'll figure it out. He searched my face. You're scared. Yeah. Of me leaving? No. That was the lie. He saw through it instantly. Yes, you are. The thing is, it wasn't just about the program. It was about momentum. We'd moved fast, built something intense, and now life was testing whether it was strong or just convenient. I don't want to lose you, I said quietly. He stepped into me fully then, hands firm at my waist. You're not going to. You can't promise that. I can promise I'll fight for it. That word, fight, did something to me. Because I'm used to surviving, not fighting for something. 6 months, he said softly. We can do 6 months. I looked at him. You really believe that? Yeah. Why? Because this isn't casual. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just certainty. About me. About us. And for the first time, I chose not to brace. Not to pull back. Not to protect myself preemptively. Okay, I said quietly. Okay. We try. He searched my face like he was making sure I wasn't just saying it. I'm not half trying, I added. A slow smile spread across his face. Good. The next 3 months moved faster than the first 6 weeks ever had. We didn't waste time. Didn't avoid hard conversations. We planned. Schedules. Flights. Days off. We talked about expectations. About communication. About jealousy. About what we'd do when it felt hard. And it did feel hard. Sometimes before he even left. The night before his departure, we were back at that overlook outside the city. The same place where he'd first admitted he was thinking about me. Now the air felt heavier. More fragile. You sure about this? He asked. Yes. You don't sound sure. I am. He stepped closer. If at any point this feels like it's breaking you, you tell me. You'll tell me too. Deal. We stood there in the quiet. No dramatic speeches. No promises we couldn't keep. Just honesty. I love you, he said. Simple. Clear. No theatrics. My breath caught. He hadn't said it before. Not directly. And suddenly everything felt very real. Very permanent. Very vulnerable. I stepped into him. Pressed my forehead against his. I love you too. It didn't feel rushed. It felt earned. He left the next morning. And watching his truck disappear down the street was the first time I felt the full weight of what we were risking. Not because we were weak, but because we were choosing something that required effort, patience, trust. The hardest part wasn't the goodbye. It was the quiet after. But this time, I didn't shut down. I didn't brace for impact. I leaned in. Into the calls. Into the job. Into the relationship. Because loving him wasn't about proximity anymore. It was about commitment. And 6 months later, when I saw him walking through the station doors again, same confident stride. Same stupid grin. I didn't hesitate. Didn't check who was watching. Didn't second guess. I walked straight up to him and kissed him, right there, in front of everyone. Because somewhere between the first call and the first fight and the first "I love you," my new partner hadn't just become someone close. He'd become home.